Most people die spiritually, long before they ever die physically, and it always starts with telling the wrong person too much. You think you're just being open. You think you're just sharing. But what you're really doing is arming someone with the very things they'll use to destroy you. 5 secrets you should keep to yourself if you don't want to get killed. Welcome back to all the loyal minds walking the path of strength. And if you're new here, you're not here by accident. Subscribe, like, and stay with us till the end, because this isn't just another video. This is a blueprint to protect yourself in a world that punishes vulnerability in ways most people never even notice. From social media to therapy apps, from TikTok rants to late-night text messages, you've been conditioned to believe that speaking equals healing. But here's a question no one asks. What if the wrong ears are always listening? What if healing doesn't come from sharing, but from knowing when to stay silent? Let me make something clear. This isn't about paranoia. This is about precision. Silence is not a weakness, it's a weapon. There is a reason every ancient warrior, every king, every wise man held back more than they revealed. Because every time you speak, you give away positioning. Every detail you drop maps your mind for someone else to use. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics didn't just value silence. They lived by it. In a Roman Empire soaked in power games, betrayal, and blood, silence wasn't just virtue, it was survival. Here's where psychology kicks in. Every time you share a personal goal, a secret pain, or a plan, your brain releases dopamine. It feels like progress, but it's not. Studies show that announcing your goals publicly makes you less likely to achieve them. Why? Because your mind gets a reward just from being heard, not from taking action. And the more you're heard, the more you're hooked. So what looks like ambition becomes addiction, not to success, but to validation. Now here's where it gets darker. In today's culture, silence is often confused with being insecure or closed off. But the truth is the opposite. The loudest men are usually the most scared. Stoicism doesn't teach silence as suppression, it teaches it as self-mastery. Epictetus, once a slave, later a philosopher, had every reason to scream his pain, but he didn't. He trained his mind to observe before reacting, to think before speaking, to withhold until wisdom told him it was time. You think you're just talking? You're signing contracts with people, with perceptions, with outcomes you might never be able to undo. How many relationships have crumbled not because of lies, but because of too much truth given to the wrong person? How many people have been killed, reputationally, financially, even literally, because they trusted someone who seemed safe? The mistake wasn't trusting. The mistake was speaking before observing. Silence isn't passive, it's the highest form of discipline. Marcus Aurelius journaled daily, not for Instagram, not to vent, but to refine thought before speech. He knew a man who controls his tongue controls his future. Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue. Zeno of Citium. This is not just a Stoic video. This is how to survive in a world where weakness gets punished. You are watched. You are studied. You are profiled. Not just by enemies, but by those closest to you. That's not cynicism. That's the world we live in. And that's why in this video, we're going to walk through 5 powerful secrets that the wisest people in history and the most dangerous survivors in our world today have never shared openly. Until now. Let's begin with the first secret, the one that cost people their empires before they even build them. Secret number 1, your long-term plans. So you've got a plan, a dream, a mission that keeps you up at night. And maybe you think the best thing you can do is tell someone, share the excitement, announce it, speak it into existence, right? But what if I told you that speaking it into existence is the exact thing that kills it. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But notice, he didn't say, "Tell everyone what you want to be." He said, "Say it to yourself, then act." The Stoics lived in times where words had weight. A wrong sentence could cost you your life, so every word had to be measured, like a blade being drawn slowly from its sheath. In their world, and in ours, the moment you speak your vision, you invite distortion. You give people something to judge, to laugh at, to mimic, or worse, to steal. Here's what most people don't understand. When you tell someone your goals, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, the same hit it gets after you achieve the goal. It feels like you've done something, but you haven't. You've just opened the oven door on a cake that wasn't ready, and now it won't rise. Your mind gets tricked. It celebrates too early, and what could have been a fire becomes smoke. Think about how many plans you've told the world about, only to abandon them weeks later. Was it laziness, or was it the brain's betrayal? Celebrating too early is the enemy of progress. That's not motivation. That's a psychological trap. I'll tell you a story. There was a young man, talented, sharp, relentless. He had an idea for a startup, something that could shake up an industry. So naturally, he shared it. At dinner parties, with friends, on Twitter, everywhere. And then, silence. Not because the idea failed, but because someone he told built it faster, launched it sooner, claimed it louder. He was left with nothing except bitterness, and a hard lesson burned into his mind. Not everyone who listens with love. Julius Caesar understood this. When he planned to march on Rome, an act that would change the history of the world, he didn't make an announcement. He didn't start a podcast. He crossed the Rubicon in silence. No warning, no speech, just action. But what if you only tell your friends? They'd never betray you, right? Wrong. Sometimes the most dangerous discouragement comes from the people who love you. They don't mean to do it, but they will. You tell them your big goal. Maybe it's moving abroad, starting a business, leaving a secure job, and their face shifts, not because they hate you, but because your courage threatens their comfort. You shine a light on what they could be doing, and that light becomes a shadow between you. So they say things like, "Are you sure that's realistic? Maybe you should wait a few years. Don't get your hopes up." And in their voice, you hear concern. But behind that concern is fear, not for you, but for themselves. And if you think strangers won't envy you, think again. Comparison breeds envy, and envy breeds sabotage, sometimes quiet, sometimes subtle, but always destructive. That coworker who always smiles when you speak about your new side hustle, they're silently tracking your failure. That cousin who encourages your ambition, they'll be the first to say, "I knew it wouldn't work," when you hit your first roadblock. This is not about bitterness, it's about being prepared. Here's what the modern Stoic does. He builds quietly, in silence, in the early mornings, in notebooks, in solitude. And then, when it's ready, he launches loud, not for validation, but for impact. That's how real power moves. Quiet in the making, loud in the arrival. When you see someone winning, realize you're not seeing the building, you're seeing the presentation. The real work was done in silence. Your long-term plans should stay with you until they're unbreakable, until they no longer need protection, because until then, they're fragile, vulnerable, still forming. But if your plans are fragile, your emotions are even more so. And when you start sharing this next thing, you don't just risk failure, you risk emotional extinction. Let's talk about the one secret people love to share, but always regret later. Secret number 2, your love life and emotional vulnerabilities. If sharing your long-term plans exposes your future, then sharing your love life and your pain exposes your soul. There's no quicker way to hand someone control over you than by opening the door to your emotions without a lock. The Stoics warned us long ago that love is a passion, and passions, in their language, meant storms of the soul. They weren't harmless, they were fire. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But when it came to emotional entanglements, he was clear. Be measured, be mindful, because emotion unchecked becomes obsession. And obsession, that's when love mutates into something dangerous, not just for you, but for everyone who gets close. What do most people do when they fall in love? They talk endlessly. They tell the world who they're with, how they feel, what they've been through, how they finally found peace. And what do they do when it ends? They talk more about the betrayal, the pain, the lies, the healing. But here's the truth. Every time you open up to someone, you're giving them a loaded gun and hoping they never pull the trigger. Most people won't shoot, but some will. And the worst part? It's usually not your enemies. It's the friend you confided in, the partner you overshared with, the stranger who screenshotted your post. We live in a world that loves vulnerability. At least that's what we're told. But here's what the data says. Emotional expressiveness is a magnet. For some, it attracts connection. For others, it signals prey. Studies in behavioral psychology show that narcissists, sociopaths, and manipulators target those who openly display trauma, not to comfort them, but to mimic them, bond with them, and then use their own words to control them. If you've ever told someone, "I just don't want to be abandoned again," then watch them abandon you the moment they had leverage. You've seen this play out firsthand. It wasn't a coincidence, it was strategy. You taught them how to hurt you. Look around. Everyone is broadcasting their love stories, their engagement shoots, their couples therapy, their public breakdowns. But what's more tragic is what happens after the overshare. Followers stop engaging, comments turn vicious, strangers mock their heartbreak like it's a soap opera. And the one thing that was sacred, the relationship, the vulnerability, the emotion, becomes a commodity. It's monetized, memed, mocked, and the person is left hollow, not just because the love failed, but because the world watched it fail. In Stoicism, trust is not free. It is earned, carefully, gradually, privately. Think of trust like money. Every time you share something intimate, you're making a payment. Share too much too fast, and your account runs dry. Worse, you go into emotional debt. Now you need the other person to validate you, and when they leave, they take your balance with them. That's why the Stoics practiced emotional sovereignty. Love deeply, but inwardly. Trust slowly. Speak wisely. The strongest man in the room is not the one who speaks most openly, but the one who guards his center, not out of fear, but out of respect. There are things sacred enough to keep, not because they're shameful, but because they are powerful. Your heartbreak is not for everyone to dissect. Your healing is not for public debate, and your love should never be a performance. To love is to risk. To overshare is to surrender. And in a world that profits from your pain, silence is the only way to stay free. So the next time you feel the urge to post, to text, to vent, to share, pause. Not everything that hurts needs to be explained. Not everything that heals needs to be seen. Your love life is not content. Your heartbreak is not strategy. Your healing is not for applause. Guard what's sacred, because the moment you share it with the wrong eyes, it stops being yours. Now, let's talk about something even more dangerous to reveal than your love life. Because while people may envy your plans and exploit your emotions, There's one thing they can destroy just by knowing you have it. Let's talk about money. Secret number 3, your financial status. If you want to know how safe someone feels, ask them how loud they are about their money. The louder they are, the more fragile their peace. The Stoics weren't poor because they couldn't get rich. They were indifferent, not to wealth, but to dependence on wealth. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That's not an excuse for poverty, it's a mindset shift, because real power comes from not needing to prove you have it. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, yet he wrote more about self-control than silver. Why? Because even he knew money can buy many things, except peace of mind. Now let's talk about the world you live in. A world where showing your money makes you a target. Envy isn't a distant emotion. It lives next door. It smiles in your comments section. It shares your wins and quietly hates you for them. The moment you let people know what you have, you stop living for yourself. You start performing. You post the trip, you flash the watch, you humbly flex the car, and now you're in a game you didn't sign up for, the game of appearances. There are 2 kinds of people who notice your wealth, those who admire it, and those who plot around it. A manipulator doesn't need to rob you physically. They rob your emotional security. They ask for favors. They guilt trip you. They remind you of everything you have and everything they don't. And fake friends? They love your money. They love your lifestyle. But the moment it's gone, so are they. But let's get darker. Because for some people, your money is not just envy fuel. It's opportunity. 2009, Florida. A woman wins the lottery. $30 million. Within a year, she's found murdered. The person responsible, a man who pretended to be her friend. He listened, he earned her trust, and he waited. 2022, Los Angeles. A young influencer posts a photo in her driveway, showcasing a designer bag and luxury watch. That night, she's robbed at gunpoint. Coincidence? No. That was a trigger. And it happens every day. You just don't hear about the ones who survive. But they all say the same thing afterward. I should have kept it to myself. There's a saying among the truly wealthy, if you're still trying to look rich, you're not. The man who has real power doesn't need validation. He doesn't need followers to applaud his success, because quiet money moves differently. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it doesn't announce itself. It lives in modest houses with no debt. It drives cars that don't scream. It takes care of its family in silence. That's why understated living isn't weakness, it's armor. Armor against jealousy, against manipulation, against the pressure to keep performing. If nobody knows what you have, nobody can take it from you. Let's go deeper. The most dangerous thing about money isn't what it buys, it's what it does to your ego. Suddenly, you feel invincible. You start to believe you're owed respect. You expect the world to notice. But the Stoics remind us, you are not your bank account. You are not your possessions. You are your mind. And if that's not in order, no amount of zeros will save you. Money can draw danger, but it's nothing compared to what this next secret attracts. Because while people will kill you for your wealth, they will bury you alive for this next thing. It's not something you carry in your wallet. It's something you carry in your bones. If you're still here, you're not watching for entertainment. You're watching because something inside you knows. The world is not as innocent as it pretends to be, and the only way to survive it is with wisdom, restraint, and silence. So here's what I ask of you. If this video is speaking to something real in you, subscribe. Because I make these videos for you, not for algorithms, not for trends, but for people who need to hear this before it's too late. And if you've already subscribed, thank you. You're not just part of an audience, you're part of a mindset most people never reach. Like, subscribe, share this with someone who talks too much. Now let's continue. Let's talk about your pain, the past you wish people never knew, the family scars, the trauma, the part of you people pretend to comfort just so they can use it later. Secrets number 4, your family issues personal trauma. There are wounds that don't bleed, wounds that aren't visible, but they shape how you trust, how you love, and how you survive. And in the age of openness, of vulnerability and healing journeys, you're told to share everything, your trauma, your childhood, your family secrets. But the truth is this, you don't heal by exposing your scars to strangers. You heal by learning who deserves to see them. The Stoics were not born in perfect homes. Marcus Aurelius lost his father at age 3. Epictetus grew up as a slave. Seneca endured exile, manipulation, and eventually forced suicide. But not once did they allow their personal history to become their identity. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus, you are not your family dysfunction. You are not your trauma. You are what you choose to become despite it. But becoming more means speaking less. There's a tragic lie in modern culture that telling everyone your story is the same as healing. It's not. In fact, it can do the opposite. People form fixed judgments, fast. Once you tell them about the abuse, the addiction, the broken family, that's who you become in their mind. They stop seeing your growth. They stop believing your evolution. You're not a warrior to them. You're a wounded animal, and they'll always look at you like one. And that's the kind version, the dark version. They feed on it. Every predator knows what to look for, a person who talks too much about their pain. Narcissists call it supply. You give them emotional access. You show them where you're soft. You tell them what your father did, what your mother didn't do, what you wish someone had said to you. And they use it, not all at once, piece by piece, in arguments, in manipulation, in gaslighting. They say, you're just like your dad, or worse, no wonder your parents didn't love you. You don't forget those words, because they were said by someone you trusted, using your truth. There's a pattern that repeats itself online. A YouTuber or influencer shares their childhood trauma. The crowd claps, the views rise, the sympathy flows. But then, the audience turns, the comments shift. They say, stop playing the victim. Everyone has trauma. You're emotionally unstable. Now the very thing they shared to connect becomes the reason they're mocked, and there's no undo button. Therapy can also backfire when done in the wrong place. Some people overshare with colleagues, friends, even strangers, hoping for empathy and getting judgment instead. They say, thanks for trusting me, but inside, they're telling someone else right now. There's a difference between healing and performing healing. One builds peace, the other builds followers. Real healing happens in quiet mornings, in notebooks that no one reads, in walks where you cry and no one sees, in choosing to forgive people who will never say sorry. And you do it not for applause, but for your own liberation. The Stoics didn't stand on pedestals and confess their pain. They transformed it into discipline, into stillness, into power. When you're healing, remember this ancient truth. Don't bleed where wolves drink. This chapter wasn't about staying silent out of fear. It was about choosing discretion out of self-respect. When you bleed in public, you give people the tools to define you. But when you heal in silence, you become someone no one can control. There's nothing wrong with having scars, but there's something very dangerous about showing them to people who only smile when you're weak. The next secret is harder, because it's the one most people can't hide, but should. Secret number 5, your next move. A Stoic archer draws the bow. He aims with full intention, but once he releases, the outcome is not his to control. That's the discipline of life. You aim with excellence. You release with detachment. But what you never do is shout your target across the battlefield. The Stoics were not passive. They made decisions, bold ones, but they never confused stillness with weakness. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell his advisors every move he planned for the empire. He wrote in a private journal for himself. Epictetus didn't teach his students how to impress others. He taught them how to endure silently and strike when the moment was right. The archer analogy is simple. You aim, you focus, you prepare, but you never announce your shot before you take it. Because the moment you speak it, the wind begins to shift and the target starts moving. There's a hidden power in silence, a quiet mystique. The less you say, the more people wonder. When you speak your next move too soon, you do two things. 1, you open the door to sabotage. 2, you dilute your own focus. You start editing your plans based on feedback you never needed. You start adjusting your timing to match other people's comfort. And suddenly, your move is no longer yours. Your future becomes a group project. And if you've ever been in one of those, you know how they end. Robert Greene said it plainly in the 48 Laws of Power. Conceal your intentions. Why? Because clarity is control. And when you are the only one who knows your direction, no one can intercept it. Your next move, your career decision, your breakaway strategy, your silent pivot, loses power the moment it becomes predictable. Think of the greatest victories in history. They didn't come from loud declarations. They came from surprise, from discipline, from absolute silence, until execution. Here's the rule for the modern Stoic. Share results, never steps. Let them see the launch, but not the blueprint. Let them hear the applause, but never the rehearsal. Silence gives you space to change course, to fail quietly, to refine privately. Because the more people who know your process, the more pressure you feel to prove something. And pressure doesn't produce genius, it produces panic. Your next move is your most powerful asset. It carries momentum, intention, timing. But the moment you speak it too early, you weaken it. You give people time to doubt it, to talk you out of it, to copy it, or to sabotage it. This is how empires fall. This is how plans collapse. This is how people with brilliance end up with nothing. Not because they weren't capable, not because they lacked vision, but because they couldn't shut up. The next time you feel the need to post, announce, explain, or prove, remember this rule. Those who tell everything end up with nothing. You've made it this far. You now know what not to say, and why silence is your greatest weapon. But before we end, there's one last thing left to say, or rather, not say. The final reflection, the silence that changes everything. Final reflection. The silent warrior. The most powerful man in any room is the one nobody fully understands. Because when people don't know what moves you'll make, they can't block you. When they don't know what you care about, they can't control you. And when they don't know what hurts you, they can't hurt you. This isn't just Stoicism. This is strategy. This is self-defense in a world that studies your weaknesses and sells them back to you. Stoicism was never about being passive. It's about precision. It's not about staying quiet because you're scared. It's about staying quiet because you've already decided, and you don't need permission. You don't need to announce that you've changed. Just change. Don't tell them what's next. Just be next. Move like a shadow. Strike like a mind that no one can map. This world is loud, desperate, attention-hungry. It celebrates oversharing and punishes the unguarded. But not you. because now you know. Master silence. Build in shadows, move like smoke, win in silence. And if this video lit something inside you, something real, then subscribe. Don't just watch from a distance. Be part of the few who think deeper, live sharper, move smarter. Like the video. Share it with someone who talks too much, or with someone who needs to disappear and rebuild. The silent warrior doesn't ask for respect. He moves, and the world adjusts. Silence is power. Subscribe for more.